fact that as a result of feminism, we're seeing that the lifespan of women is decreasing, but the lifespan of men is actually set to see a massive rise.
Welcome back to Chow Time Pod. It's your host Red. Got a video today from Angry Guy. Apparently, men are starting to live longer, and women's life expectancy are starting to go down. Congratulations, woman! You got what you wanted. Equality. Please subscribe down below. I really appreciate that. Let's get to that chow. It's chow time.
Women are passing away as men live longer. So we're going to be looking at a bunch of different articles. The first one is one you've already seen already. It says US millennial women are now more likely to pass away in their late 20s and early 30s than any generation since the World War II era.
Congratulations, lady. Feminism gave you what you guys wanted. Equality to men. Now you guys are having the same life expectancy as us, which is not a good thing.
However, that's not the article that I want to focus on because many of you have already seen that. What I actually want to really jump into and I want to talk about is the fact that as a result of feminism, we're seeing that the lifespan of women is decreasing, but the lifespan of men is actually set to see a massive rise. You see,
You know, it's interesting because they always say men live longer, men do better when they're married and with the families. And I could somewhat agree with that. But that was back in the day, right? When women were nice, women were submissive, women did what they needed to do to take care of the home. Now to be married nowadays with the modern woman, I don't see that happening so easily. I see a lot of men getting destroyed more often than they were to build together.
men give so much of themselves, so much of their lives to provide for the families, to provide for others that they don't take proper care of themselves.
That's
But
100%.
we are seeing reversals. So men are living longer now. However, a
Nice.
specific group of men, a major survey reveals that in the past 20 years, Britain has risen from 10th place to inside of top 5 in League of Life expectancy, and British men can now expect to live longer than those in France, Denmark, Spain, and Greece. So,
Okay.
what is the reason why these men are actually living longer? Better off men are revealed to be healthier than ever before, pushing the average
Mm.
life expectancy of all males up to almost 76 years compared to just more than 70 2 decades ago. And you have to understand,
Wow. In 2 decades, we were able to raise 6 years average, or in the UK. Damn. That's huge.
that's the average life expectancy. So that means that these guys at the other end are actually living now to be into their 80s and 90s, well into their.
My best friend's grandfather, bless his soul, is about to hit 102 this year. 102, boys. Fucking 102. Get to it. Stay healthy.
80s and 90s. This is a massive gain. Now, what does that have to do with men as a whole? Well, more and more men, especially in the United States, are no longer marrying. They're no longer having children. They're focusing on themselves, their own happiness. They're taking care of themselves. They're sleeping more. They're eating better. They're
That I can see. The sleeping more and eating better. Yes, health nowadays is a lot more apparent in people's minds. And men are just not working as hard as they used to. Men are not working themselves to the bone, especially American, leftist type men, where they just want an easier life. They rather do the bare minimum to live a nice life. They don't care about being in relationships. I don't even want to say they're leftists. They're just, more minimalist people out there nowadays, especially men. Men are the more minimalist people. That's why men's expectancy is going up, because we're not stressing ourselves to earn that bag, to get that bag, as most women are trying to do nowadays. So it's balancing. It's balancing.
resting. They're doing much better in life as a result of dropping out of the workforce. And if they do work, they're only working enough to provide for themselves and to save money and live higher quality lives.
And this is true. Like, I tell you guys, my monthly bills are maybe $1,000 a month by myself, single, no kids. Rent 700, I got car insurance, phone bill. I mean, I have a couple other like I have Adobe and other subscriptions for doing this, but other than that, it's about $1,000 a month. Most women cannot live with $1,000 a month. Their monthly bill is way more than $1,000 a month, and they have to make that money to live that type of lifestyle that they want, and that puts a lot of stress on people. This is why a lot of husbands died early because that whole stress was on them for the whole family, the kids, the mother, the wife, the other extended families.
just on their own. Millions of men have dropped out of the workforce, leaving companies struggling to fill jobs. And this is an article from 2023. It's a matter of our national identity. And, there's a lot of people that are grieving right now. A large number of American men of prime working age between 25 and 54. That's a massive, massive number, and that's a crazy range. So this is not just so it's young men and it's men in their 50s. So basically,
That's 30
everyone from
years.
Gen
Holy
Z
shit.
to
That's almost like two to maybe three generations worth of men right there, almost.
Gen X are dropping out of the workforce in terms of men. They're not working or even looking for work, resulting in a major hole in the American economy. The number is only growing steeper and steeper. In 1953, 98% of men in that age range had a job or were looking for one. That number has fallen ever since. Today, 7.2 million men have essentially dropped out of the workforce.
That's
These are not
huge.
old men, these are men between the ages of 25 and 54.
And this was like earlier this year article. Now imagine how passport bros have gone. A lot more remote work, a lot more men just leaving the country too. And leaving the country and living in more countryside Asia countries, I can see why your life expectancy is also longer. Asian countries have pretty decently life expectancy, even though they live in not the greatest conditions.
This is a massive, massive demographic. It's a matter of our national identity, said Mike Rowe, and I think it's a giant issue. And by the time we realize how big of an issue it is, we're going to have a hard time turning the temperature down. It's not an issue rooted in the unemployment rate, which at 3.5% is the lowest it's been in 50 years. So what's behind the phenomenon? We have more jobs than we have people for them, and
Yeah, well, we're not reproducing enough people. Like each generation, ever since baby boomers, I believe, but and on, has really shrank slowly. And the Gen Z, Gen X, the latest generation is the smallest generation compared to everybody. So it's hard for a small generation to propagate the rest of the generation up through taxes and all that because there's not enough of them.
about half of the jobs and about one and a half jobs for every one worker, says Jay Timmons, who leads the National Association of Manufacturers. And he said that I've never thought
And this is why immigration is a good thing here in the US. One of the arguments for it being a good thing.
I'd be able to say, he told CBS, that, you know, we can't fill these jobs. But now it's kind of an all hands on deck situation. We've got to fill these jobs that are open. More than 770,000 manufacturing jobs are open right now, according to the latest federal count from November. And the number has surged in recent years as companies reinvest in American made products or try to. And it's not just a perception. Carla Trotman, CEO of Electrosoft, a company outside of Philadelphia that makes circuit boards, said she wishes 45 people worked there instead of 30, but that she can't find people to fill the roles. So she cannot find just 15 men. 15 men. The cost cutting
Well, it could be women too. It's circuit boards, but women don't want to do these jobs because it's not prestigious jobs.
company, it's costing the company around 15, let me correct myself, $5 million in top line revenue as she's enforced to down potential contracts. So they're losing massive amounts of money. These men are not taking these jobs. They don't have to, because listen, guys, when men can live on very little, men don't need a lot to survive. And the more that men pull back, don't marry, don't have children, instead focus on their own livelihood and their own best interest, we're seeing the decades and decades of consequences that have been compounded upon men for marrying. because there's this perception that a man will do better in marriage, but that's something
I
that's
was talking
far
about this
fetched.
earlier.
That's in that's 100 years ago.
Yeah.
That's in our grandfather's generation, because many of our parents are now divorced as well. They were miserable people. You look at the baby
I mean, even I admit my father and mother divorced like a few years before my mother passed. So yeah, and they were somewhat miserable in a sense.
boomer generation. A lot of these guys can't stay together. They can't stay in a solid relationship. And you can look at the consequences for marriage, where the man gets married.
It's the thing is too, even though my father, divorced my mother, or my mother divorced my father, my parents are actually the only family members that got divorced. Every single one of my aunts and uncles have never divorced. And even outside of them that are like cousins of cousins, they also have never divorced. My dad is very ashamed of it. It's probably one of the biggest things my dad is ashamed of is breaking up his family and divorcing, or being divorced with my mother. And actually the whole family kind of looks down on my dad because of it too. And that's how it gets shamed in my culture and my family, that even divorce itself makes you look like a weak man. Makes you look like a man that couldn't propagate your family. It makes you look like a man that couldn't lead your family to prosperous times like everybody else was able to. It's a harsh truth for my dad.
married, and suddenly his livelihood begins to deteriorate. His wealth begins to evaporate. They say, well, married men make more money than single men. They do, because they have more mouths to feed. How
Mm,
much disposable income does a
that's
married
the
man have
important
compared
stuff.
to a single man? And that's where they shut their mouths. Because you have a married man that makes $150,000 a year, but he doesn't even have $20,000 to spend on himself.
Mm,
While you have a single man that makes $50,000 a year, and after taxes, all of that money is his, and he's walking around with 30, $40,000 in disposable income.
that's actually a very good argument from Angry Guy. I agree with that argument. That is a solid, solid argument.
Because he's also making more money on the side. It's unbelievable.
It is true. Again, when I was married, I was more risk adverse. I didn't want to take as many risks. I didn't want to do as many things because I needed to spend time with my ex-wife. Why? Because I want my relationship to prosper. If I didn't have that to worry about or to put effort and time into, I could be a lot more successful now. Why? Because I would have taken a lot more risk. I would have done a lot more crazy type jobs. I would have done a lot more things. But it is what it is.
And men are living better, higher quality lives. They're sleeping more. They're playing video games, watching television, relaxing, focusing on their connection with God, growing closer to God, happy, traveling. The passport kings are moving around the world, seeing new places, making new friends. They're having relationships with tons and tons of women. Of course, when you look at the women in Western society, they are attacking these men, trying to shame these men, while these men are cleaning up around the world. What's very sad is that whenever you hear that a passport king doesn't do well overseas, like for example, one of them passes away because something went wrong, you have these women celebrating on social media
That
like,
they
"Look,
do.
yep, look at that passport, bro. Look at that. Y'all getting deleted. All right, I bet."
And it's funny because when we see passport sis getting deleted, we don't make fun. We don't want that to happen. We tell them like that's what happens. You have to be careful. This is why we never suggest women to travel like that by yourself. But women on the other side just like revel in other people's deaths. That's same thing with KS, right?
Bet y'all need to learn your lesson. Come back and find yourself a feminist woman. Step your game up and find a feminist. They don't comprehend that these men are walking away because they don't want to marry a woman in Western society. They are choosing to go outside of Western society because they do not like what's being offered in Western society. They
Mm-hmm.
don't want to marry a feminist. And these women are literally out here saying that, well, a real man would be able to find a woman over in Western society and marry the feminist of his choice. And it's like they refuse to accept that men don't want to marry these people. They don't want to have relationships. They don't want what's being offered. They are rejecting these things. I showed you a picture of a comment that was made by this African American lady. Great to hear regarding men walking away from society and going overseas to start new lives with women who appreciate them in foreign countries. And she goes, great to hear. Now make it a one way, not round trip ticket. Guys, you look at the narcissism,
Right.
we are not checking for y'all. Easy to choose a woman when you are paying. But women in America say that you need to make at least above six figures, or even preferably $1 million a year or more, and it better increase from there because her cost of living, her standard of living, is only going to.
Remember, women thrived relationship wise because they were married and housewives for a very long time for a lot of generations. Now that they're not housewives, they're boss babes and working on the grueling, front lines as men are. Yeah, they're gonna die just as often as we are. Why? Because of the stress, because of that labor, that intense physical demand that most jobs have, even if it's not that physical of a job. It's just women never had to deal with these things before, so they aren't built for this stress. They aren't built for this type of work for a long period of time.
Increase when you're with her. And she says the real flex is being able to bag a woman anywhere without having to book a ticket. Y'all are really doubling down on this false narrative of being chosen. You really should have your choice of baddies here if you are worthy.
We don't want baddies. Stop with this stupid ass baddie narrative. When you think of a baddie, do you think of a good person? It literally is in the word baddie. I don't want someone that's bad. I want a goodie.
But you are not. But it's like they will never admit that the men don't want these women. They don't like the way these women behave. They don't like the what these women are offering. They don't like the personalities, the narcissism, the disrespect. They don't want feminism. They don't want that masculine energy.
Nope.
It's like these women don't get it. They cannot.
Whew, that was an actually damn good chow. A lot of things I didn't know. A lot of things, a topic that we don't really talk about. What has feminism really done? It's actually given a little bit of equality, but definitely in bad ways. We don't want women to be having life expectancy the same as us men. We worked very, very hard to make sure women live for a very long time. And now women have actually reversed it themselves. Now they're living just as long as men because they want to put in the same amount of work as men. Go ahead. Equality, bitches. Please subscribe down below. I really appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys next time. Ciao.